I would have wanted to see live.
All right, we're here. Jonathan Macri, welcome back to the show.
What's up, my friend? How are you?
I'm doing well. Knowing what you know now, would you redo the Julius Randle cat trade?
Probably not.
Hmm.
And I know that's going to come off as very disparaging to Karl Anthony Towns, and it shouldn't be because Cat's a very gifted player, and I do think that there is probably a world where he can be a successful winning player in the NBA. I'm not sure that this is the ideal situation for him, and Jalen Brunson, who is my favorite player, I'm not sure Jalen Brunson is the perfect running mate for him. I think Jalen Brunson probably needs a different type of running mate. I think Julius Randle was probably better suited for that role. All that being said, if the Knicks didn't make that trade, they were still out a center last year. So revisionist history, like where are you going to go get a 5-man in a big season, or do you just punt that year and try to figure it out this past summer? Like there's a lot of revisionist history that goes into a question like that. But given everything that we know in totality, would I go back and do it again? No, I wouldn't.
How much of the lack of shots coming from Karl Anthony Towns lands on him, lands on Brunson, lands on Mike Brown? What's the percentage? Where would you go with the percentages there?
I would. I mean, we could quibble about does someone get 45% of the pie versus someone gets 25%. It's on all of them. It's on every single one of them. And again, I don't think that any one of those parties is intentionally doing anything wrong. Like I think Jalen Brunson is not. I don't think he's a selfish player. I think he does what he thinks he should do to give his team the best chance to win the game. I just don't think it's instinctual for him to always be looking for a guy like Cat. I think Brunson works best where he looks for his own shot, and then when he draws the help, he finds the open man, as opposed to a more traditional pick and roll point guard. So I think that's an issue. And then look, Mike Brown, I think both him and Karl Anthony Towns have made comments to this effect. I think Mike Brown wanted Karl to play a certain type of way coming into this year. I don't think Karl was thrilled with being asked to play a certain type of way, maybe similar to how Domantas Sabonis was used back in Sacramento. And I think a lot of the issues this season stem from the fact that those two have not seen eye to eye. Now, recently, Mike Brown has made some comments alluding to the fact that they are perhaps simplifying the offense for Karl Anthony Towns, adjusting the offense to fit Karl Anthony Towns' skill set. And I think up until last night, you saw some better stuff from Cat. But I think there are still issues, and these issues go back to last year that have nothing to do with Mike Brown. That when you face the better teams that have the personnel to really stifle Cat and where he likes to go and how he likes to operate, you're going to get underwhelming performances like we got against Cleveland.
I think the biggest percentage of the pie actually should go to Jalen Brunson, but it's not really his fault in a lot of different ways. He is what he is, a great scorer, not a great facilitator, not a great defender. I think Knicks fans are overrating this guy. I really do, man.
Brunson?
Yeah.
Oh, I think you're nuts. I think you're absolutely crazy. I think
no, because we knew Melo was a great player. We knew Patrick Ewing was a great player. I feel like Knicks fans put Brunson on that type of pedestal, and he's just not that because he is a great scorer, but he doesn't manage the game well and he can't defend.
He's not on the pedestal of Carmelo Anthony and Patrick Ewing. He's
not
higher.
to you. Oh, he's higher.
Yeah, Jalen Brunson is the greatest Knick I've ever seen, and I watched Patrick Ewing starting in 1994, which was probably a little past prime for Ewing. There's never been a leader on this franchise like Jalen Brunson since Willis Reed and Clyde Frazier. He is one of the 5 most gifted isolation scorers in the game today. He always tries to make the right play. He always goes out there and intends to do whatever he needs to do to help the team win. Defensively, obviously, that's a weak spot for him, but you could say that about a lot of the best scorers in the game today. And I think we've seen more than enough evidence over Jalen Brunson's time with the Knicks that if you put the right personnel around him, his defense is not going to be the thing that holds you back. I think the biggest issue with him and Cat and just like him in this starting 5 is in order to make Jalen Brunson sing, get the best from him, you need to surround him with certain type of personnel, which we saw, by the way, in the 2023-24 team. when those lineups were absolutely killing it both before the Randall injury and after the Randall injury. Honestly, go back and look at the numbers of him, Hartenstein, Josh Hart, and Dante DiVincenzo. Not exactly a murderer's row of NBA talent, but those guys killed each other because they played the right way and they played into Jalen Brunson's strengths. This team, as it's currently constructed right now, with this starting five in particular, they don't play to Jalen Brunson's strengths, which is why you see them struggle as a starting five. And yet, go look at the numbers when he's out there with Mitchell Robinson. Absolute world beaters.
You know, I do hear what you're saying, but I would also say that the supporting cast they have built around Brunson is pretty good.
Like in a vacuum, yeah.
You have Wingstop, you have Karl Anthony Towns, one of the most skilled big men. Defensively, it doesn't really make sense. I know you say there are other great players that don't play great defense, but if you give them that supporting cast, I think you might be able to get a chip with some of these guys, some of these elite level players that we're talking about.
If you, in a vacuum, if you just look at New York's starting five, and I think their front office certainly did because they went out and got Mikal Bridges, they went out and got Karl Anthony Towns. They thought that it would work perfectly. I think there's a number of problems, though. I think they have a problem because there's only one ball, and you have a guy like OG Anunoby that a lot of nights is relegated to the fourth option, and you don't like that very much. And I think he's a guy that needs to be in a little bit more of a rhythm to get going. You see him, the difference between him on nights where he gets a lot of opportunities, where he gets in the flow of the offense versus a night like last night and a lot recently. It's a rough watch. And I just don't think that this starting five, for as much as their skill sets theoretically complement each other, I don't think they have enough role players in that starting five. Like the one guy who you'd say is the closest thing to a traditional role player, Josh Hart, is a guy that you could exploit if you want to put a center on him and dare him to shoot like he did against Cleveland, went 2 for 8, completely hamstrung their offense. So I think the situation where Jalen Brunson would work best in, if we're really looking at it, would be to have more of a traditional number two. Again, not saying Julius Randle was a perfect player, far from it, but he was more similar to that kind of mode. And those two guys played off of each other beautifully when they were in lineups that worked. And then a bunch of role players, a guy like Isaiah Hartenstein, who Jalen Brunson went out there with him, and it looked like the most devastating lead guard in the NBA. So I'm not super hopeful that it's ever going to work with this five, but like you said, they're super talented, so maybe they figure it out.
How'd you feel about the game last night?
Not particularly good, but also not surprised. I think this team has been trending in this direction for a little while now. Look, I think clearly they are capable of winning big games and beating good teams. They beat the Spurs in the NBA Cup. They've had some other wins against quality opponents this year. But I think they are more dependent, perhaps, on their three-point shooting than almost any other team in the league because they don't have the defensive backbone and they don't have scorers other than Jalen Brunson who could get into the teeth of the defense and make stuff happen. Karl Anthony Towns is not a guy you toss the ball to and say, here, go get me 25, 30 points. Like you need to have a certain type of offensive system going on around him. So their threes weren't falling last night, just like their threes weren't falling in some of the games against Detroit this year. It makes it for a very uphill battle.
Knicks fans are hitting me up. You're going to see when the Knicks and Pistons play who the better players, but I don't think it has anything to do with that when it comes to Cade Brunson. I think if the Pistons shoot the ball the way they shot it, they're going to win. If the role players don't shoot the ball the way they shoot it, the Knicks will win. I don't even think it comes down to Cade and Brunson.
Look, I think Cade's been the better player this year. Obviously, even putting aside the offense, defense is not even close. I mean, he should be at the top of the MVP discussion, depending on the games played for other stuff. But if you look at how that Pistons roster is constructed, and I think this was very clear in the recent matchup between the games, they have Cade Cunningham as the head of the snake, and then everybody else on that roster is in service of Cade Cunningham and making him sing and making those minutes hum. It's a team full of role players. Mm-hmm. I mean, Jalen Duren's the closest thing they have to like a second star, and him and Cade have as good a two-man partnership as any two guys in the league.
So chemistry, you think it's better, but talent-wise, his supporting cast is nowhere near Brunson's, right?
I would say the Pistons are deeper in quality NBA players, but honestly, you look at the season Landry Shamet is having. Like, I know nobody wants to talk about Landry Shamet, but Landry Shamet's been awesome. He's like the Knicks' eighth man. They haven't been fully healthy, I don't think, all year because Deuce McBride is out now with an injury.
Yeah.
But I think the bigger issue is the fact that on the Pistons, those guys know their role, they buy into their role, and they excel at their role, and everybody's role makes sense when you factor it into the larger ecosystem. I think the Knicks balance like you could talk all you want about the talent that they have, the talent still needs to make sense with each which of the other parts. And I think when you look at the Knicks, and particularly the Knicks starting five, I don't think, and this again, this is not a this year problem. This goes back to all the way back to last year, to last January when teams really started to lean into guarding Josh Hart with their center. But that's not even the only issue. There's tons of issues with the starting five. They just don't make sense together.
Do you think that Tibbs firing was the right move in hindsight?
I think Tibbs probably needed to go. I think he had worn out his welcome with certain people in the organization, and things had gotten a little bit too, I don't want to say toxic, but Mikal Bridges clearly had no love lost for Tom Thibodeau. I think, I'm not sure that OG Anunoby was necessarily the biggest fan of Tibbs. There was certainly probably another role player or two who didn't love him. And needless to say, the front office and him were not seeing eye to eye because he didn't want to hear what they had to say. But Tibbs was an exceptional in-game coach. You knew going into a series against anybody other than maybe Eric Spoelstra that Tibbs was going to be at least on equal footing with whoever he was coaching against. And he knew how to get these guys to dig deep. That said, I remember not long ago, the narrative was the Knicks did not show up against good teams in the regular season. That was under Tom Thibodeau. Now it's a repeat of the same thing with what's going on with the Pistons and again last night against the Cavs. So I think it was a move that needed to be made. Was there a perfect candidate to replace him? I'm not sure. What I will say, though, is for as good a job as Mike Brown has done, and I do think that he has done a lot of good things as coach of this team, the fact that he has not seen eye to eye with Karl Anthony Towns this season, I think has been one of the bigger issues, and there have been other things sprouting from that main problem.
Did you notice that Mike Brown went to no middle defense, and that's what Tibbs brought to the NBA? It's a little ironic.
I think it's been a little bit of a challenge for Mike Brown figuring out the defense this season. Their defense certainly got better after he made some adjustments. Going into last night, they had, I want to say, the best defense in the league over the previous 15 games. Now, they played some patsies in that schedule, but still. To me, New York's defense, more than the scheme, comes down to one guy, and it's OG Anunoby. When OG Anunoby is playing as well as he can play at an all-defense, borderline defensive player of the year level, and he could really shut down whoever the opposing head of the stake is, everything else falls into place. Mikal could do his off-ball stuff. Josh Hart could grab the third most threatening perimeter player. You could hide Brunson and Towns a little bit more easily. But when OG is just kind of okay, and I thought, for instance, against Cleveland, he was just kind of okay, I think everything else kind of goes belly up on that end of the floor.
Is it fair to say that Cat and Brunson could be an unsolvable problem on the defensive end for a coach?
It's a tough question to answer because we have seen moments, stretches of games.
But that's like Josh Hart's jump shot, though.
Well, that's a little unfair because Josh Hart's up until before last night, he was shooting 40% from three this year.
But that's what I'm saying. Like Portland, he shot 40%. I remember. Then it goes down. Then it goes up. It's kind of like, but we got to be consistent.
This season has been up pretty much the whole year. Cat, we're talking about games at a time where maybe, you might have a good defensive possession here or there, a good half a quarter defensively, something like that. That's in there. He has it in there. He has it in him to play acceptable, passable defense. Active hands, moving his feet, really engaged. This season hasn't been there nearly enough, and yet you look at the on-off data, and they paint Cat as a really positive defensive player, and Brunson is the bigger issue. Now, I would agree that Brunson's defense has been the bigger problem this season, but he's another guy, I think lately, last 10, 15 games, he's brought it a little bit more on the defensive end. Is it an unsolvable problem? No. I don't unsolvable problem because I think you could have a slightly better than league average defense with those two guys, which is fine if you have one of the two or three best offenses in basketball. And too often against good competition, They don't have an offense that's anywhere near among the top 2 or 3 in basketball. And that, in a roundabout way, is the real Jalen Brunson, Karl Anthony Towns problem, because you would think that those two together on offense are an unstoppable combination, and they've been anything but.
Watching the Cavs last night, I know you're a huge James Harden fan. We've debated this before. Former scoring champ, former assist champ, former MVP. But do you think the Cavs have a legit chance to win a title this year?
I think they definitely have a chance to make the finals. I think that's legit. I think I think Detroit should probably be the favorites. I would probably put Boston second because of the Tatum thing, and he's probably going to be coming back. But yeah, no, I think they absolutely have a chance to make the finals. And if you make the finals, who knows what happens? To me, I'm very encouraged. I would be encouraged if I was a Cavs fan by the fact that you don't have to have the ball in James Harden's hands in the fourth quarter of a close game. You could put the ball in Donovan Mitchell's hands and trust that he's going to be able to steer the ship. So if James Harden has one of his classic playoff performances, it might not kill you. Now, I think there's still some other things that they need to address, but I like the way this Cavs team is built. I think they're good.
Who do you think wins the East, knowing what you know now?
I'd probably go with Boston. If I had to put my money on one team, I would have to go Boston. I think they're the best coach team, probably by a significant degree. I think Joe Mazzulla might run laps around some of the other coaches that he's going to face in some of these big playoff series. Maybe not Kenny Atkinson. Atkinson's a good coach, but Cavs, again, for as much as I just talked them up, I think they have their own playoff issues. Mazzulla is an exceptional basketball coach, and they've been there before. They have the DNA. They're not going to get scared. As much as the Knicks beat them in games 1 and 2 of the Eastern Conference semifinals last year, like, I think even the most diehard Knicks fan would agree deep down in the part of their soul that they don't want to talk about. Like, the Celtics also kind of beat themselves in those games. So I think they probably learned from that. I think Tatum coming back, if he does come back, and I think he will, I think he could only help. I don't think that there's going to be any kind of maybe there's going to be a slight adjustment period. But that dude, just like everything I said about Jalen Brunson, Jason Tatum cares about winning. That's what he cares about. I don't think he's going to try to commandeer the offense. I don't think he's going to try to step on Jaylen Brown's toes. I think it's going to be as seamless a fit as you could possibly have with a 25 usage guy coming back into your roster late in the year.
It would be a great story for Boston if Tatum could come back as a Robin and they win the East. I mean, that'd be incredible.
Imagine if all he needs to do is shoot open threes, attack closeouts when they're there.
You know what it reminds me of? What Melo should have been doing, and he kind of transitioned to towards the end of his career. Like, focus on sliding your feet and make a three, and everything else will be okay.
Yeah, I mean, a little past his prime by that point, but I just think I have all the respect in the world for Boston and what they could do. I still think the Vooch trade has a chance of helping them, even if it's only for 10, 15 minutes a game in the playoffs, just as a different look to throw at teams that they may not be. It's like we got to prepare for this Boston machine, and now we got to deal with this little wild card here.
Yeah, I like to talk about X factors on this show, but it's so weird with the Knicks that the X factor is actually one of their star players, and we talked about Cat already, but it feels like Cat is the X factor. When you're usually talking about X factors, you're talking about a role player.
I've said before that Cat, to me, is the most talented, highest paid X factor in the league, because there are nights where he can legitimately look like the most devastating offensive force in basketball, this side of Nikola Jokic and a couple of other guys. He has that in him. He has it in him. We saw it last year. We saw it in game 1 against the Pacers before things went to shit in the last 3.5 minutes. And then there are games where you don't even know he's out there on the court. Like yesterday in the third quarter, I think he touched the ball twice before he went to the bench, and once was on an offensive rebound. But again, to go back to the very first conversation we just had, that's not all on him. It's a lot on him. And I would, unlike you put most of the blame on Brunson, I put most of the blame on the player because players have agency. But he is absolutely 100% their biggest X factor.
There's something emotionally unstable sometimes when I watch Karl Anthony Towns play. Like, for a quarter, he'll just be manic, and then the next quarter, it'll be super low energy. Do you see that as well?
it's so energy is an interesting way of putting it. I think sometimes it is about the energy, but also it's almost like his head's not always in it in the way that it needs to be.
Mhm.
And I think that's the bigger problem. Like even again, I'm not putting last night all on him. It's not his fault completely that he only got 5 shots, but there were a couple of possessions where like, he got the ball poked away from him by Dean Wade and he stands there looking at it. Like you got to be fully engaged, fully involved for every minute you're out there on the court. And the reason why I think Karl Anthony Towns gets so much crap from so many Knicks fans, including me sometimes, is that you compare and contrast those sorts of performances with him with the guy he effectively replaced in Isaiah Hardenstein, who you never once had to worry about any of those sorts of things. Doesn't have like a third of the talent maybe as Karl Anthony Towns from an offensive standpoint, but in terms of all those other things, and again, to bring it back to what we were saying about Brunson, that's more the center that Brunson needs to play with than a guy who is uber talented, but almost needs to be accommodated in all of these different ways.
How big of a problem is the tanking problem in the NBA, and how can we fix it from your perspective?
I think it's a big problem because if you're I don't want to say like a diehard NBA fan, but if you're someone who actually likes to watch games, it's a big problem because you turn on the NBA on any given night, and let's say there's 10 games, 7 are going to be a game featuring a tanking team or a team sitting their star or whatever the case may be. So I find it to be a big problem. And yet you had the commissioners say before the season started that we're a highlight league. And if you have tanking teams, it doesn't change the fact that you could still put out highlights from your other games and even from those games that have tanking teams. So to me, this is going to be a thing where the NBA is going to continue to do the bare minimum to solve the problem. My guess is they're going to do away with mid-lottery pick protections. But until you take an axe to the existing system and stop giving teams an incentive to not win basketball games, nothing real is going to change.
It's hard to say it's a highlight league for the live experience, right? Like you can't really, like, for people go to the arena, I mean, it got to be more than a highlight league.
And
on social media, that's cool.
And the prices you have to pay to get in the arena. The only other thing I'll say, I'll pitch you a very quick idea that someone threw to me. This is not my idea. So one of my Knicks Film School readers pitched this to me, which is that you have a draft after every season in which from the bottom up, let's say you're the worst team. You'll get the first pick in the draft, second worst team, second pick, so on and so forth. But you're not drafting NBA players. You are drafting draft picks for the following season. And if you're the worst team in the league, you get first pick as to what team's pick do we want next year, with their only caveat being you can't draft your own pick. So you're drafting the pick of the team that you think is going to be the worst, and then so on and so forth. So that way, nobody has a pick of their own that is attached to their own record. So there's no incentive for anybody to be bad.
Yeah. Is there a world that the Knicks blow it up after this year?
Blow it up in what sense?
Blow up the core.
Yes. I think the Giannis thing is hovering. If they don't win a championship this year, and I would even go so far as to say, if they don't win if they don't make the finals for sure, maybe even if they don't win the championship, they're going to go full on after Karl Anthony Towns or after Giannis Antetokounmpo. Whether they could get him, I have no idea. But that would mean Cat going out. That would probably mean one of OG Anunoby or Mikal Bridges going out. The better question is if they can't get Giannis and Karl Anthony Towns is now a year away from what would be his player option, which at this point you have to assume he's going to opt into. What do they do then? And what are they going to do if they feel like, all right, we got to move off of Towns, but the best offer for Towns is something like what the Mavs got from Anthony Davis? What do you do? How creative can this front office get? And I don't have the answer to that question, but I think I will say this, and I say this with absolutely zero reservations. If they don't make the finals, there is zero chance that this starting five is coming back in the way that it is next year.
For you, which players would be untouchable in a Giannis trade?
Brunson's. In theory, nobody should be unbrunchable.
Unbrunchable. Look at that.
Unbrunchable. Freudian slip. Untouchable. For me as a fan, for as long as Jalen Brunson's in the league, or at least as long as he's in his prime, I don't want a Knicks team. I don't want to watch a Knicks team that doesn't have Jalen Brunson on it.
Thanks for taking the time. Where can we find you, Macri?
You know where you can find me. Knicks Film School is the name for everything that we do. I am at JC Macri NBA on social media.